My name is Nadine Holt. I am 63 years old. Betrayal. When it finally stepped into my house, didn't arrive shouting. It came politely, with a folded spreadsheet and the smell of coffee. Sunday light crossed the table, soft and even. I had made roast and vegetables, the kind of meal that once brought us closer. My son, Evan, moved food around his plate without eating. His wife, Sabrina, adjusted her napkin as if she were preparing for a meeting. I wanted you both to know first. I said, after 43 years, I'm retiring next month. The pension will be $2,400 a month. Modest, but steady. Evan gave a small nod. Sabrina set down her fork with purpose. That's good timing. She said, we've been meaning to talk about rent. I frowned. Rent, yes. She replied, calm and sure. You've been living here for free, and expenses are high. We think half your pension would be fair $1,200 a month. Her voice was firm, rehearsed. I waited for Evan to intervene. He didn't. That seems reasonable, he muttered. We have bills. Mom, mortgage, insurance, all of it. I looked between them. Mortgage. Yes, Sabrina said. You know how things are. Portland's expensive. The word expensive echoed through me, dull and cold. I remembered the day I wrote the cashier's check for $340,000, my entire savings from decades of engineering work. I remembered standing in this same kitchen, telling Evan, now you'll have a start. And here we were. My gift had become debt. Sabrina slid a paper toward me. This outlines the costs utilities. Food, shared spaces. You can pay cash or transfer it, whatever's easiest. Easiest, I repeated. Of course, I poured myself more coffee just to keep my hands busy. You've thought this through. It's just structure, Evan said quietly. No need to take it personally. I smiled thinly. I used to design structures. Evan, I know how they fail. Sabrina's smile stayed frozen. We'll start in April. Then I nodded. Because silence was sharper than argument. She took that as agreement. After lunch, she gathered her notes and said, we'll write it up formally. Good idea, I said. Precision keeps everyone safe. Evan tried to soften it. It's only for a while. Mom, until things even out. Of course, I said again. When they moved to the living room, I cleared the table alone. The house made its familiar small noises, the pipes, the floor, the sigh of air through the vents. It was a language I'd learned over years of maintenance and quiet pride. On the wall by the stairs were the pencil marks of Evan's childhood, each year a little higher. I traced one faint line from when he was 12, remembering how he'd laughed when the pencil tickled his hair. I went upstairs, closed my door, and leaned against it until my heartbeat slowed. My hands were steady now. On the top shelf of the closet, a cardboard box waited, labeled in my handwriting, House Original Papers. I took it down and placed it on the bed. I didn't open it yet. I just sat there, breathing. The house I had bought 15 years ago, the one I'd placed in my son's name to help him, had quietly turned against me. But structures tell the truth if you know where to look. Voices drifted from downstairs low. Practical, already dividing the future into numbers. I reached for the lid of the box, lifted it slowly, and saw the documents resting where I'd left them, the cashier's check, the closing forms, my name in black ink beside every signature line. I touched the paper, steadying myself on its truth. Then I closed the lid and slid the box beneath the bed where I could reach it without a stool. Some foundations you keep close when the storm begins. When I went back downstairs, Sabrina turned from the couch. We'll finalize everything next week, she said. All brightness again. That will be fine. I said. In the kitchen, I rinsed my cup and set it upside down on the rack. The light outside had shifted to Portland gray, the color between warning and calm. My fingertips rested on the counter's edge. "All right then," I murmured. The plan would start tonight. The house was silent by the time I went back upstairs. Evan and Sabrina had turned in early. Their bedroom door closed with the soft finality of people who sleep well after cruelty. I stayed awake. The air smelled faintly of coffee and furniture polish. The scent of small order. On the nightstand, the clock pulsed its steady heartbeat through the quiet. I reached under the bed for the cardboard box I had moved there that afternoon. The edge scraped the floor. When I lifted the lid, the paper smell rose like something living old ink. Manila folders. A faint trace of cedar. I sat on the carpet and opened each envelope with care, like handling pieces of myself. March 2010. Closing documents. My name printed on every line that mattered. Buyer, Nadine Holt. The cashier's check was still there too, crisp and pale under its plastic sleeve. The number written in my handwriting. Neat from years of drafting $340,000. Paid in full. No mortgage. No loan. No debt. I held the paper until my fingers warmed through it. Downstairs, a floorboard creaked. Evan's voice murmured something. Half asleep, the same rhythm he used as a boy talking in dreams. I froze, listening to the walls hold his sound the way they always had. I turned the page. The deed transfer 15 years ago. I had signed it over to him. Back then. He was 30, newly married. Worried about credit scores and job security, I had told him, "You'll need a strong start. I'll put the house in your name. Someday, when I'm older, it'll still be family." Now, my words had grown teeth and come back for me. The house creaked again, the old pipes exhaling. And I realized how much of my life was built on the idea that love returned in equal measure. It doesn't. It just echoes until someone stops listening. I laid out the pages on the carpet deed. Check. Renovation receipts, proof lined up like soldiers who never got called to battle. When I heard footsteps on the stairs, I stacked the papers quickly. Evan's shadow crossed the doorframe. "Mom, you're still awake. I couldn't sleep," I said. "Old habit." He rubbed his eyes, leaning against the frame. Sabrina didn't mean to sound harsh earlier. She just worries about bills. Everything's expensive now. I remember when you used to say that about textbooks. I said, "Back then, I bought you every one without asking for rent." He sighed. "You're making this bigger than it is. We're just trying to balance things. You can afford it. I can." I said evenly, "That's not the point." He shifted, uncomfortable. "Mom, don't make this about pride. We all have to adjust. Sabrina's trying to plan ahead. I planned ahead too." I said, "In 2010? He frowned. "What do you mean?" I tapped the stack beside me. "This house. I bought it in full. Every beam. Every nail. Every window. You remember the summer we replaced the kitchen flooring? That was my retirement bonus." He looked at the papers but didn't reach for them. "You gave me the deed." "Yes," I said. "I gave you the title, not the right to erase me." His jaw tightened. "It's done. The house is in my name. That's how it works. That's how you think it works." For a moment, the air between us was nothing but old warmth cooling down. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Mom, this isn't worth fighting over." "I agree," I said quietly, "but you should get some sleep." "I'll be fine." He hesitated. "Please don't talk to Sabrina about this tonight. She's under stress. I'm sure she is." He nodded, awkwardly grateful for the softness in my tone, and turned back toward the stairs. The floor groaned under his weight until the door shut again below. I sat still, watching the papers breathe in the faint light. I traced my name at the bottom of the deed. Steady, clean ink. My signature had aged better than my faith in fairness. I gathered the documents and slid them back into their envelopes. each one heavier now. The check went last. I pressed the air out of the sleeve before sealing it again, as if I could trap the years that had slipped through. When I returned the box to the closet, I kept one page out the copy of the cashier's check. I laid it flat on my nightstand beside the clock. The seconds passed with quiet precision. Each tick sounded like a small nail being driven in the right direction. Downstairs, the house sighed, its old bones adjusting. I whispered to the darkness, "You remember who built you?" The clock kept counting. So would I. By Monday morning, the house had changed hands without any new paperwork. When I came downstairs, Sabrina was standing at the refrigerator, smoothing a sheet of paper under a magnet shaped like a sunflower. She stepped back, admiring it as if she'd hung a painting. "What's that?" I asked. "House rules," she said briskly. "Just to make everything clearer. It'll keep things comfortable for everyone." Her tone was the same one she used with delivery drivers. I walked closer. The page was neatly typed. Bullet points in black ink. Kitchen access 7 to 9 in the morning. 6 to 8 in the evening. Shared spaces, please clean after use. Television hours, family priority from 6 to 10. Thermostat setting 60 degrees. Non-adjustable. She'd even signed the bottom management. "Management," I said. Sabrina smiled. "Just a little joke." Evan entered, already in his work jacket. He kissed her cheek, avoiding my eyes. "You two all set?" "Yes," she said quickly. "Everything's organized now." I folded my arms. "So, I'm a tenant. Don't be dramatic." "Mom," Evan muttered, "it's just structure. We all need that." I looked at him for a long moment. Long enough that he turned away first. "Structure." I repeated, "That's one word for it." Sabrina straightened the paper again. "It'll help avoid confusion." I opened the fridge. There were sticky notes on containers. Now her handwriting labeling lunch. Evan. Dinner. Leftovers. Do not use. The milk had my name written across it in black marker, as if that small mercy needed permission. I poured myself a glass anyway. She watched, smiling, like a landlord checking the meter. When they left for work, I sat at the kitchen table and pulled a small notebook from the drawer. It had a blue cover and college-ruled pages. Something I'd used for grocery lists and measurements once. I wrote a title across the first line, Observation Notes. Under it, I wrote the date. Then the words House Rules Presented, Tone Managerial. Evan silent. Smell of detergent. Morning temperature cold. The sound of my pen steadied me. I underlined the word management twice, closed the notebook, and slipped it into the pocket of my cardigan. The refrigerator hummed behind me, paper rustling softly on its door. That night, the rain began its steady tapping across the roof, a sound I used to love. Back when this house was new to me, that rhythm had meant safety. Now it sounded like memory knocking, asking to be let in. I sat in my room with the old box again. The documents were already familiar, but I needed to touch them, to remind myself they were real. Paper doesn't lie the way people do. 15 years ago, I had stood in this same house with the real estate agent, a narrow woman with silver earrings who kept saying, "You'll make it a home again." I had just lost Daniel, my husband of 35 years. The funeral flowers were still drying in vases. The scent of lilies clinging to my clothes. The house had been worn but solid. Evan was 30 then, jobless after a company downsizing. His new marriage already strained. He had sat on the back steps, head in his hands, saying, "Mom, I can't start over. Not again." I had reached for his shoulder. "You will," I told him. "We'll both start over here." He'd helped repaint the living room walls. His brush strokes uneven but eager. I had measured every beam, rechecked every joint. The engineer in me took comfort in angles and numbers. I told him, every structure can stand again, as long as the foundation is true. When the sale closed, I wrote the cashier's check myself, $340,000, saved from decades of work. I'd insisted the deed go in his name. He had looked at me with disbelief. "You're serious?" "Of course," I said. "You'll have something to build on. You'll take care of it one day." He had hugged me, whispering, "I don't deserve this." I had smiled, "Then earn it." Now, years later, those words clung to me like a bruise that never faded. I was still sitting there when Evan knocked on my door. "Mom, you up? Come in." He stepped inside, holding 2 mugs of tea. "Sabrina said I should talk to you." "About earlier." I took 1 mug, let the steam rise between us. "You don't have to smooth things over, Evan. You made your decision." "It's not like that," he said quickly. "We're just tight on money. The mortgage." "There is no mortgage," I interrupted. "You and I both know that." His eyes flicked away. "There was a line of credit, but a loan against something you didn't buy." I said. My voice stayed calm, but the air between us thinned. He set his cup down on the nightstand. "Mom, please, don't turn this into a fight. I'm doing what I can. Sabrina keeps everything organized. But it's been hard since my hours got cut. She's just scared." I studied him. The circles under his eyes were deep, his shirt wrinkled. But pity and anger sit too close together to tell apart. "When I bought this house, I thought I was giving you room to grow," I said quietly. "Not a stage to forget me on." He winced. "That's not fair." "I'm not sure fairness is what you want anymore." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "You'll always have a place here," he said finally. "We're just trying to make it work." I looked at the box on my lap, then at him. "A place is not the same as a home, Evan. You can't charge someone rent for love." He had no answer for that. He rubbed the back of his neck like he used to do as a boy caught lying about homework. "You've always been dramatic," he muttered, too softly to be brave, but loud enough to hurt. I didn't respond. The silence did the talking for me. He stood there another moment, then walked out. The hallway light cast his shadow long across the floor, stretching toward the door like something leaving for good. When he was gone, I opened my notebook and wrote beneath the last entry Evan visited. "Brought tea, mentioned mortgage, tone evasive, trust strained." The rain deepened above me, steady and unrelenting. Each drop struck the roof I had built for him, counting the years between what I gave and what was taken. The next morning, I woke before dawn. Old habit. Engineers learn to rise early, before the noise begins, when the world still holds its balance. The coffee maker gurgled softly. The house stayed quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the whisper of rain against the porch. On the kitchen wall, Sabrina's list of house rules fluttered under the vent like a small flag of conquest. I sat at the table and opened my notebook. Its blue cover had started to curl at the corners. I turned to a new page and wrote the date. Then I paused. I needed to think not like a mother, but like the woman who used to draw load diagrams for steel bridges and test where a structure would fail first. When a building cracks, it rarely happens suddenly. Stress travels along the invisible lines first, quiet and hidden, until something gives way. Families aren't so different. Sabrina came in half an hour later, barefoot, holding her phone. "Oh, you're up," she said. "Could you make another pot?" Evan forgot his thermos again. I filled the machine and said nothing. She leaned against the counter. "I wanted to talk about the rent timeline. We'll need the first payment on April 1st. If you prefer, we can set up an automatic transfer. It's easier that way." "Automatic," I repeated. "Yes, Easier for you. Her smile didn't move her eyes. It keeps things clear. Clarity is good, I said. It helps you see what's really carrying the load. She blinked, uncertain if I was agreeing or correcting her. Exactly. I slid my notebook closer, covering the words already written. You've done a lot of planning, Sabrina. I hope you've considered every beam, every beam, I said. Every part that holds up what you've built. It's usually not the big things that fail first. It's the small cracks no one notices. Her lips tightened. If this is about the rent, Nadine, we're not changing it. It's settled. I'm sure it is. The coffee finished brewing. I poured her a cup and one for myself. She took hers, murmured a polite thanks, and left to wake Evan. When the room was empty again, I wrote another line beneath my notes. Stress points identified. Structure weakening. Pressure required. I underlined the last phrase twice and closed the notebook. The house seemed to exhale with me. I had spent a lifetime building things that lasted. Now I would learn how to make something fall carefully, precisely, and by design. And by Thursday morning, I had memorized every line of the deed, every date, every receipt. What I didn't have was a plan, or not one that existed outside my notebook. I found the name James Porter online, an attorney whose biography mentioned former structural engineer. That detail mattered more to me than all his degrees. I called his office, expecting an assistant, but his own voice answered. Porter Law, he said. The voice was firm, clipped, efficient. This is Nadine Holt, I replied. I need to speak with someone who understands both numbers and foundations. A pause. You've called the right person. Can you come in at 1 o'clock? I'll be there. The office was downtown, tucked between a florist and an accounting firm. The receptionist greeted me politely, offered coffee, and gestured to a waiting chair. The air smelled faintly of paper and disinfectant. When James Porter appeared, he looked exactly as I'd imagined, mid-50s. Calm eyes, a slight stoop from years at drafting tables or courtroom benches. Mrs. Holt, he said, shaking my hand. Please come in. His office had blueprints framed on one wall, certificates on another. He motioned to the chair across from his desk. Tell me about your structure, he said. I smiled faintly. That's one way to put it. He listened as I explained everything, how I bought the house 15 years ago, how I'd signed the deed over to my son to help him build credit, how my daughter-in-law now demanded half my pension as rent. He didn't interrupt. He took notes in small, precise handwriting. When I finished, he leaned back. You said you paid cash for the property. Yes, $340,000. Every penny documented. And your son contributed. Not a cent. Good, he said. Not unkindly. That simplifies things. He reached for a legal pad and began sketching lines, arrows, names, dates like a blueprint of human greed. What you're describing fits under a doctrine called constructive trust. He explained. When one person provides funds for a property but puts it in another's name, the court can recognize the funding party as the real owner. It treats the title holder as a caretaker who violated that trust. I nodded slowly. So the law knows what betrayal looks like, in certain languages. Yes. He said, in others. It's just called equity. I pulled the cashier's check copy from my folder and placed it before him. March 2010, Bank of Oregon. I kept the original. He examined it carefully. Then the receipts, roofing, insulation, plumbing, all with my name and signature. You're methodical, he said. I built bridges for 40 years. Methodical keeps them standing. He smiled slightly. It might keep your case standing too. His tone shifted from gentle to direct. Mrs. Holt, what you did signing over the deed was generous but unwise. Fortunately, your documentation fills the gaps. If we file, you can reclaim ownership or at least secure a financial judgment. But I need to know one thing. Do you want reconciliation or recovery? The question hung in the air. I thought of Evan's eyes avoiding mine, of Sabrina's voice calling herself management. Recovery, I said. Reconciliation can wait until they remember who built the house. He nodded. Then we begin there. He explained the process step by step, drafting the petition. Filing under equitable ownership, serving notice. His language was steady, clean, like the sound of a well-leveled beam. I asked, what are my chances? With evidence this clear 60 to 65 in your favor, but more if they react badly, which, from what you've told me, they will. He reached for a folder labeled Client Intake and handed me a form. I'll need a retainer to start $8,000. I opened my purse and withdrew the checkbook from my new account. It's already waiting, I said. He raised an eyebrow. You came prepared. I stopped showing up unprepared about 30 years ago, I said. Signing my name, he glanced at the signature, then at me. You're not like most clients I meet in these cases. You're calm. Anger clouds the math, I said. He smiled. And I suppose you still believe every problem has a structural solution. Of course. You just need to find the weakest point and press. He studied me a moment longer, then stood and extended his hand again. Then we'll press carefully. I'll file the initial claim Monday morning. They'll be served within 48 hours. I stood too. That soon greed moves fast. Justice shouldn't lag behind. As I turned to leave, he added, Mrs. Holt, may I offer one piece of advice? Go ahead. When the structure starts to shake, don't look back at what you built. Keep your eyes on what you're reclaiming. I met his gaze. I never built this house for nostalgia. Mr. Porter, I built it to stand. He nodded, approving. Then let's make sure it still does. Outside. The wind carried the smell of rain across the city. I walked toward the bus stop, the folder pressed to my chest like a new set of plans. For the first time in weeks, I felt steady, not angry. Not afraid, just precise. That night, I opened my notebook and wrote, consulted James Porter, attorney, former engineer, introduced constructive trust. Filing Monday, retainer paid $8,000. Probability of success, 65%. Below that, I drew a small line sketch, 3 rectangles stacked like walls, one column drawn stronger than the others. Beneath it, I wrote, pressure will be applied here. I closed the notebook, set it beside my bed, and turned off the light. The house breathed around me, unaware that its blueprints had changed hands again. Sunday lunch again. Same table. Same light, but everything had shifted. Sabrina laid out a printed spreadsheet beside the salt shaker. I've updated the rent agreement, she said, to match market rates. I didn't touch the paper. Market rates. Yes, she said brightly. Portland's gone up since April. $1,500 a month is more realistic. Evan cleared his throat, but said nothing. 1,500, I repeated, for my own room. She smiled, as if explaining to a child. It's not just the room, Nadine. It's the utilities, the food, the wear and tear. You use the laundry machine, the heat, the lights. It all adds up. I leaned back in my chair. And the house. What about it, she asked. It was paid for 15 years ago, in full. Her eyes flickered. Evan told you about the loan, didn't he? That's why we need the increase. We're behind on a few payments. I nodded slowly. A few. She mistook the calm for agreement. See? You understand. It's just a temporary adjustment. Evan finally spoke. Mom, it's only fair. We all have to contribute. I already have. I said softly. You just forgot how much. Sabrina shifted in her chair. Let's not make this emotional. It's business. That's all. Business, I echoed. Then you should keep your paperwork. You'll need it. She frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing for now. I took the sheet, folded it neatly, and slipped it into my notebook. Evan rubbed his forehead. Please, Mom, don't make this harder than it has to be. I'm not, I said. You are. For a moment, the table went still, just the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of Sabrina's pen tapping. She finally stood, gathering plates. I'll need the first payment by the end of next week, she said, and if it's easier, we can deduct it automatically. Automatic sounds fine, I said. My voice was smooth, almost gentle. When they left the table, I opened my notebook and wrote, Rent increase to $1,500. Justification market rates. Tone confident. Pattern greed expanding. I underlined the last phrase once, closed the notebook, and smiled to myself. The higher they built their staircase, the harder the fall would be. The next week, I went to the bank on Hawthorne Avenue, the same one where I'd deposited my pension for years. The clerk behind the counter recognized me and smiled. Good to see you again. Mrs. Holt, what can I help you with today? I'd like to check on some property records. I said, just confirming something for my files. He guided me to a terminal where public mortgage information could be searched. My hands were steady as I typed the address of the house, my house, and waited for the screen to load. It didn't take long. The figures appeared in clean, black lines, home equity line of credit, issued March 2024. $80,000, borrower Evan Holt. The next line froze me. Delinquent balance $7,200. Status pending foreclosure notice. I exhaled slowly. So that was it. The rent. The sudden need for my pension, it wasn't about fairness. It was about survival. They were drowning. And they had decided to use me as the lifeboat. Would you like a printed copy? The clerk asked. Yes, I said. Please. He handed me the pages with polite efficiency. I thanked him, left the bank, and walked until I found a bench under a half-dead maple tree. The wind tugged at the papers, but I held them tight. The numbers didn't lie. Evan had borrowed against the house I bought outright, and now the bank owned more of it than either of us. When I returned home, Sabrina was on the phone in the kitchen, her voice clipped and bright. We'll make the next payment, she said to whoever was listening. My mother-in-law's pension starts soon. It's under control. I stood in the doorway until she saw me. Her smile faltered for half a second, then snapped back into place. Everything okay? I asked. She covered the phone's microphone. Oh yes. Just the bank. They can be so impatient, can't they? They can, I said, especially when someone owes them $80,000. The color drained from her face. Excuse me, I held up the printouts. You should be more careful what you leave on public record. She hung up the phone without saying goodbye. You had no right to look that up. I had every right, I said quietly. My name may not be on the title anymore, but it's still on the foundation. She crossed her arms. You don't understand the pressure we've been under. Evan lost hours at work. The bills kept coming. What were we supposed to do? Ask. I said. You could have asked. Her chin lifted. And hear another lecture about responsibility? No, thank you. We just needed time. Time, I echoed. You've had 15 years of it. The front door opened. Evan stepped in, carrying a folder from his office. He froze when he saw us. What's going on? Sabrina threw the papers at him. Your mother decided to spy on us. He looked at the pages and then at me. His mouth opened, then closed again. Why didn't you tell me? Evan, I asked. I was going to. He said, it wasn't supposed to get this bad. How bad is it? He ran a hand over his face. They sent a delinquency notice last week. We're behind 2 months, so the rent my pension was to cover the payments. He nodded. We thought if we could just hold on. Refinance. Maybe. Maybe what? I interrupted. Pretend it never happened. Use me to pay for it quietly. Sabrina's voice sharpened. We weren't using you. We're family. Families help each other. Help. I repeated. That's one word for it. Evan's shoulders sagged. Mom, I swear, I meant to fix it. You know I'd never… You already did, I said softly. You gambled the house I bought for you. You hid it, then tried to make me pay the price. He sat down at the table, rubbing his temples. It wasn't supposed to go this way. I watched him, the same boy who once promised to take care of me when I was old. The pity came like a pulse, short and fleeting. Then it passed. I gathered the papers, folded them neatly, and slipped them into my notebook. I understand now, I said. Completely. Sabrina stared at me. What does that mean? It means the bank isn't the only one keeping records. I left them sitting there in the kitchen, both silent. Upstairs. I added a new entry to my notes, discovered home equity loan, $80,000. Borrower Evan Holt, delinquent. Motive confirmed, desperation masked as duty. Then I underlined the last 2 words. Desperation, theft. It happened on a Tuesday morning, just after breakfast. Sabrina was rinsing dishes, humming faintly, while Evan scrolled through his phone at the table. I was at the counter, pretending to read the newspaper, but mostly listening to the clock. When the doorbell rang, Sabrina frowned. Who shows up before 9? Evan shrugged. Probably a delivery. She wiped her hands and went to the door. The man standing outside wore a gray jacket and held a large envelope. His tone was polite, professional. Good morning. Are you Mrs. Sabrina Holt? She hesitated. Yes. He nodded. These are for you and Mr. Evan Holt. He handed her the envelope, signed something on his clipboard, and turned away. The whole thing took less than 20 seconds. What is this? She asked, staring at the envelope. Looks official, Evan said, standing up. Sabrina tore it open, her fingers stiff. Her eyes darted across the page, then froze. You've got to be kidding me. Evan took the second set of papers and read aloud, his voice flat. Petition for constructive trust. Filed by Mom. I folded the newspaper carefully and set it aside. Yes. Sabrina's mouth opened, then closed again. You sued us. I filed a petition. I said, there's a difference. Your lawyer can explain. Evan's hands trembled around the papers. Why would you do this? We're family. Family doesn't demand rent for something they never bought. I said. Sabrina's voice sharpened. This is insane, Nadine. You'll destroy everything. I'm not destroying anything. I said quietly. I'm reclaiming what's already mine. Evan stepped closer. You could have just talked to us. I tried. I said, you called it business. So now it is. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. Do you have any idea what this means? The court. The lawyers. Yes. I said, I know exactly what it means. Sabrina slammed the papers on the table. You won't win. The title's in our name. The law's on our side. I looked at her evenly. The law tends to favor whoever can prove ownership. I kept the proof. Her face flushed. You're bluffing. Ask your attorney. I said. Evan sank into a chair, staring at the papers like they might change if he read them again. Mom, please, this can't be how it ends. It doesn't have to end, I replied. It just has to be fair. Sabrina gave a short, nervous laugh. Fair. You've lived here rent-free for years. You've taken advantage of us. Is that what you tell yourself? I asked softly. That I'm the burden. She met my gaze. But her confidence was slipping. You'll regret this. I already regretted trusting you. I said. The silence stretched, long enough for the clock to tick 3 full beats. Evan rubbed his temples. What happens now? You'll be served a notice for response, I said. The court date will follow. You'll get the details in writing. Sabrina turned to him. We need a lawyer, today. He nodded. Still pale. I'll call around. They stood together by the sink, whispering in low voices, planning, scrambling. I watched them the way I'd once watched stress lines spread through a beam. The subtle shift before the inevitable collapse. I picked up my coffee cup, took one calm sip, and said, Don't worry. You'll have a chance to defend yourselves. That's how structure works. It gets tested. Sabrina spun toward me. You think you're so clever, don't you? No, I said. Just careful. I left them standing in the kitchen, the papers still trembling in Evan's hands, and went upstairs. In my notebook, I wrote petition served, reactions, panic and denial, structural integrity compromised. Then I underlined one sentence: the foundation has finally shifted. The morning had been ordinary enough. I went to the post office, mailed a small package to an old friend in Eugene, then stopped for coffee. I took my time walking home, letting the cool air clear my head. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like ease. But when I reached the porch, the feeling evaporated. My key didn't fit. I tried again slowly, then firmly, but the lock refused to turn. The door handle had been replaced. New brass gleamed where the old iron one had been. For a long moment, I just stared at it. Behind the door, faint voices, then footsteps. Sabrina's voice came sharp and clear through the new intercom she must have installed. We're not letting you in. Nadine, you sued us. That means you don't live here anymore. I stepped back, keeping my voice even. You changed the locks. Of course we did, she said. You can't expect to take us to court and still stay under our roof. Our roof, I repeated. That's one way to describe it. Evan appeared behind the glass window beside the door, arms folded, avoiding my eyes. Mom, please, he said. This is temporary. We just need space. You'll need more than space, I said. You'll need a lawyer. Sabrina's tone hardened. Leave. Nadine, if you don't, we'll call the police. I lifted my phone and began recording. For the record, I said clearly, you have changed the locks on my residence without providing written notice. You are aware that this constitutes a wrongful eviction under Oregon law. Evan's face flinched like a man hit with his own reflection. You can't keep threatening us with the law, he said. I'm not threatening you. I replied, I'm building a record. He stepped closer to the window, voice lower now. Don't make this worse. Mom, it's already worse. I said, you just haven't realized for who... Sabrina snapped, we're done here, and slammed the curtain shut. The quiet afterward was heavy, almost deliberate. I took photos of the door, the lock, the windows, and even the driveway from each angle. Then I turned and walked to the curb. I dialed James Porter's number. He picked up on the second ring. Nadine, what happened? They changed the locks. I said, told me I don't live here anymore. There was a pause, a breath, then a shift in his tone. Judges hate this. He said, it's one of the worst things they could have done. You documented everything. Photos, recording, timestamps. I said, good. He replied, find somewhere safe tonight. I'll file emergency motions first thing in the morning, wrongful eviction, property retrieval, possibly damages. Do I need the police? I asked. Not yet, he said. Let the paperwork speak. It'll be louder. I thanked him and hung up. Then I walked 3 blocks to a small motel called the Sunset Lodge. It was the kind of place that smelled faintly of cleaning fluid and second chances. The woman at the counter looked me over with professional sympathy. One night, she asked. For now, I said, sliding my ID across the counter. The room was small, with faded curtains and a single lamp. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened my notebook, and wrote date May 8th. Returned home at 11:47. Locks changed. Verbal eviction through intercom. Witnesses, Evan and Sabrina Holt. Recorded video and photos. Moved temporarily to Sunset Lodge. Then I added a line beneath it. They believe I'm outside. They have no idea the law is already in the house. The word steadied me. Outside. The rain started again, steady, rhythmic, patient. I poured myself a cup of water from the motel sink, sipped once, and listened to the storm gather. Down the hall, a television hummed behind another door, life going on, ordinary, indifferent. But I had learned something about structures. They can look solid right up until the moment the foundation gives way. I closed the notebook and placed it on the nightstand beside my phone. James would call in the morning, and the process would begin again, methodical, deliberate, unstoppable. For now, I let the sound of rain fill the room and thought of the porch light still burning over my door, shining on a house that had locked out its own heart. The courthouse smelled faintly of varnish and old paper, the kind of scent that carries both authority and dust. I sat beside James Porter at the long wooden table, hands folded, pulse steady. Across from us sat Evan and Sabrina, their lawyer, a young man in a shiny gray suit, whispering furiously between them. The bailiff called the room to order. The judge, a woman with a face carved from patience, looked up from her file. Case number 3417, Holt versus Holt. Sabrina flinched at the sound of our shared name. Evan kept his eyes on the floor. James stood. Your Honor, this is a motion for emergency relief concerning an unlawful eviction. The judge nodded. Proceed. James handed over a folder. We present time-stamped photos of the new locks, video evidence of the denied entry, and motel receipts documenting temporary housing expenses. Mrs. Holt has remained calm and compliant throughout this process. The defendants, however, took matters into their own hands. The opposing lawyer stood quickly. Your Honor, my clients were acting in good faith. Mrs. Holt initiated a lawsuit against them. Naturally, tensions rose. They feared further conflict, and the judge held up her hand. Fear is not a legal defense for changing locks. Sabrina's shoulders tensed. Evan's face flushed a deep red. James gestured toward me. Mrs. Holt, please describe what happened when you returned home on May 8th. I stood. My voice stayed quiet, but clear. I inserted my key. It didn't fit. When I tried again, Sabrina's voice came through a new intercom. She told me I didn't live there anymore. Evan was beside her. I informed them it was a wrongful eviction under Oregon law and documented everything. The judge watched me closely. And you sought counsel immediately? Yes, Your Honor. That same day, James passed her the motel receipt. 3 nights at the Sunset Lodge. Out-of-pocket cost $381. Sabrina's lawyer muttered, hardly damages worth. The judge's gavel struck once. Counselor, don't minimize unlawful conduct. Evan looked up then, his eyes meeting mine. For a second, I saw the boy who used to build toy bridges across the garden hose. Before shame clouded him again, the judge leaned back. Mrs. Holt, your documentation is impeccable. Mr. and Mrs. Holt, she turned to them. You cannot unilaterally remove a resident, family or not. Oregon law requires proper written notice and judicial approval. Sabrina opened her mouth, but her lawyer grabbed her arm. She ignored him. She's weaponizing the law against her own son, she said, voice sharp. The judge's eyes narrowed. Mrs. Holt, the only weapon I see is arrogance. Sit down, The gallery murmured. Sabrina's composure cracked. She sat, jaw tight. The judge continued. This court orders the defendants to reimburse all verified temporary housing costs and pay $12,000 in compensatory damages for emotional and logistical distress. Payment due within 30 days. Sabrina gasped. $12,000. That's outrageous. Outrageous, the judge replied evenly, is evicting your mother-in-law and locking her out of her own home. The amount stands. The gavel came down again, one sharp, final note that seemed to echo through the walls. James placed a gentle hand on my arm. That's the first step, he whispered. I nodded. Across the aisle, Evan stared straight ahead, unmoving. Sabrina's eyes glistened, not from regret, but from humiliation. Her lawyer whispered urgently, but she brushed him off, her face pale and still. The judge rose. Court adjourned. Chairs scraped, papers shuffled. I gathered my things quietly. As we left the room, James said, "You handled that perfectly. Calm always unnerves people who thrive on chaos." Outside, the air was bright and cool. I exhaled for what felt like the first time all week. Behind us, Sabrina's voice rose through the corridor, sharp and panicked. Evan said nothing. James turned slightly toward me. "Do you want to stop for coffee?" "No," I said, adjusting the strap of my bag. "I think I've had enough of coffee for a while." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe peace." We stepped into the sunlight. Somewhere behind me, Sabrina's words echoed down the marble hallway, angry, desperate, loud. Truth had spoken softly. That was why it had been heard. The second hearing began with the same roll call, the same patient judge, and a different kind of silence. James slid a thin stack of exhibits in front of me and tapped the top page once. "Today is about stories that either hold weight," he whispered, "or collapse when touched." Across the aisle, Sabrina adjusted a navy blazer that looked borrowed. Evan kept his hands clenched in his lap. Their attorney rose first. "Your Honor, we have affidavits establishing that Mrs. Holt treated this as a gift. My clients believed, in good faith, that the property belonged to them." The judge nodded. "Non-committal. Call your witness." They called a man I had never met, sharp hairline, shiny shoes, the look of someone summoned out of obligation. The lawyer introduced him as Robert Hayes. "You signed a sworn statement," the lawyer said, handing him a copy. "Can you explain what you witnessed?" Robert cleared his throat. "I was present when Mrs. Holt told Evan the purchase was his wedding gift. She said she never wanted repayment. Later, she paid him rent in cash. I saw it twice." James rose slowly. "Mr. Hayes, when were these conversations?" Robert scanned the page. April of 2010 and September of 2013. "And you are sure you were there?" "Yes," he said quickly. "Absolutely." James walked to our table, picked up a single sheet, and returned to the stand. "Mr. Hayes, you work for an insurance firm in Salem." "Yes." "Would you read the header on this record?" James held out the page. Robert squinted. "Employee entry logs. And what does it show for April of 2010? He swallowed. "That I was on shift in Salem. For how long?" 12 hours. James let the number sit. And September of 2013, Robert's jaw moved before words did. "Also on shift. 12 hours. James turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we subpoenaed his employer's timestamps. He could not have been at Mrs. Holt's kitchen table in Portland while logged in at a secure building in Salem." The judge looked over the record, then at Robert. "Sir, do you understand the consequences of perjury?" Robert's eyes flicked to Sabrina, then to Evan, then down. "I may have confused the dates. You were very certain a moment ago," the judge said evenly. "Sit down." Sabrina's attorney rose fast. Your Honor, the spirit of the affidavit. The spirit is irrelevant. The judge cut in. Facts are relevant. James nodded to me. Mrs. Holt, would you please take the stand? I walked forward, placed my palm on the Bible, and swore. James kept his voice level. Mrs. Holt, did you ever pay rent to your son? No. Did you ever state, in front of witnesses, that the property was an unconditional gift? No. What did you do in March of 2010? I purchased the house in full, $340,000 by cashier's check, who lived there initially, Evan and his new wife. I moved in after my husband died, when the house needed repairs. I paid for those as well. James handed me a folder. Please identify these documents. The cashier's check copy. Closing documents. 15 years of repair receipts with my name on each invoice. He turned to the judge. Your Honor, the defendants offer only an affidavit that has now been impeached by employer records. The plaintiff offers direct proof of purchase and maintenance. Sabrina's lawyer stood again. With respect, equity does not unwind family generosity. This is a mother. She wrote the deed to her son. Intent matters. James did not look away. Intent matters. He agreed, which is why we submit Exhibit J recorded messages in which the defendants refer to Mrs. Holt's first rent payment being due and a plan to increase it to $1,500. That is not the language of a recipient of a gift. That is the language of a landlord who believes he owns what he did not buy. The judge raised an eyebrow. Play the recording. James pressed a button. Sabrina's voice filled the speakers, cool and transactional. She can pay the first amount in April. By next year, we can push it to $2,000. Evan's voice mumbled in reply. Just say it's market rates. When the audio clicked off, no one moved. Evan's face blanched. He stared at the table as if it could swallow him. The judge steepled her fingers. Mrs. Holt, she said to me, what do you want from this court equity? I answered, recognition of the truth and protection from further harm. Sabrina's composure fissured. Protection from what we took care of her. We gave her a room. The judge's gaze cut her short. You changed the locks and tried to charge her half her pension. Sit down, Mrs. Holt. Sabrina sat, cheeks bright with anger she could not spend here. James returned to the lectern. We request, in addition to the relief already granted, a court-ordered forensic audit of all transactions related to the house purchase funds, repairs, lines of credit, and any transfers between the parties. The defendant's narrative shifts with convenience. An audit will not. The judge looked to the defense. Objection. Their lawyer hesitated. An audit is intrusive and expensive. My clients are already. Precisely, the judge said. That is why an independent expert is necessary. To tell me what your clients cannot. She signed something, then looked up again. I am ordering a comprehensive forensic review by a court-appointed examiner. You will provide full access to bank statements, loan records, and communications. Non-compliance will be treated as contempt. The report is due in 4 weeks. Sabrina's chair scraped. 4 weeks. That will ruin us. Your Honor, Mrs. Holt, the judge said, voice like a closed door. You are not negotiating with me. Evan finally looked at me. The shame in his eyes was open and naked, a wound without a bandage. Mom, he whispered. Please. I did not answer, not out of cruelty, but because the bench had already spoken, and my words would only blur the lines. The judge stacked the files. Until the audit is complete, all attempts to sell, refinance, or encumber the property are enjoined. Any violation will result in sanctions. Sabrina's lawyer tried one more angle. Your Honor, may we at least preserve the defendant's ability to know? The judge said. You may preserve your client's honesty for the auditor. That will be quite enough. The gavel did not fall this time. It did not need to. Authority had shifted without sound. James touched my sleeve as we gathered our papers. This is the center of the bridge, he murmured. From here, it either holds or it doesn't. We turned to leave. Behind us! Sabrina hissed something to her lawyer that I could not hear. Evan remained seated, hands over his face, as if the light itself hurt. In the hall, James exhaled. I will coordinate with the examiner, he said. Expect requests for statements and copies of everything you brought me. I have more. I replied. Dates. Notes. Voices. Good, he said. Auditors like voices that were written down. We walked toward the doors. The corridor reflected our steps back at us, a quiet rhythm that matched the one inside my chest. I did not look over my shoulder. Outside, the day pressed forward. Inside the file in my hands, the truth had been given its own appointment. 4 weeks, then daylight. James called mid-morning. His voice carried the tension I'd learned to recognize. Nadine, are you sitting down? Yes, Evan just listed the house, online. $480,000, well below the appraised value. The phone tightened in my hand. He can't sell it. The audit's not even finished. He's still the title holder, James said. Technically, he can try. But we can stop it if we move fast. Meet me at the courthouse in 30 minutes. When I arrived, he was already waiting with a printout of the listing. The photos were bright and sterile, my living room scrubbed of warmth, the kitchen counters bare, the old oak table staged with artificial flowers. The caption read, Charming 3-bedroom in quiet Portland neighborhood. Motivated seller. My mouth went dry. Motivated. I said quietly, that's one word for it. James's jaw set. We'll file an emergency injunction. If the judge sees this, she'll freeze the sale immediately. We entered the courtroom. The same pale walls, the same weight of procedure. The judge glanced up, recognizing us. Another motion. Mr. Porter. Yes, Your Honor, James said. The defendants have listed the disputed property for sale in violation of the court's ongoing proceedings. We request immediate injunction. The judge looked over the evidence, scrolling through the printed photos. Mr. Holt is aware of the constructive trust claim. Yes, Your Honor, James confirmed. The judge turned to the clerk. Draft the injunction order. File it under seal and notify the county recorder. She looked back at me. Mrs. Holt, I assume you were not consulted, not Your Honor. I said, I found out this morning. She sighed, signing the page with deliberate precision. Then let this serve as reminder ownership by deceit is still deceit. The sale is hereby frozen pending final resolution. Any attempt to transfer title will be null. Relief didn't come quickly. It arrived in measured breaths. James gathered the papers, handed one to me, effective immediately. He said, They're stuck. As we walked out, I pictured Evan staring at his failed listing, the for sale sign that would never go in the yard. He thought he was selling a house. But what he'd really put on the market was time and time, at last, was running out. The silence came first. Not peace, just the hollow quiet of things coming apart. A week after the injunction, James called. It's starting, he said. Their creditors have filed notices. The bank's moving ahead with foreclosure. I didn't ask for details, but they came anyway. They're 5 months behind. The car loan's in default. The jewelry you mentioned listed for sale online. Everything's unraveling. The next morning, I saw Evan's car disappear from the driveway, loaded onto a tow truck. He stood on the porch while the driver fastened the straps. Sabrina was inside, pacing the living room, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice carried through the open window, brittle and desperate. I told you. We just need 2 more weeks. We'll pay. The engine roared, drowning her out. Evan turned and saw me standing across the street. For a moment, he looked like the boy who used to ask me for help with math homework, uncertain, stubborn, ashamed. He crossed halfway toward me, stopped, then said quietly, "They're taking everything." I nodded. "That's what happens when you borrow against what isn't yours." He swallowed hard. "Mom, please." I didn't mean for any of this. I cut him off gently. Intent doesn't rebuild walls. Evan, you can't fix a house by pretending it never cracked. He lowered his head, the words collapsing between us. That night, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. Notice of foreclosure, addressed to Douglas and Sabrina Holt. I held it for a long time before handing it to James the next morning. "Keep it for the record," I said. He studied me. "You're not happy, are you?" "No," I said. "I thought I would be. But all I hear now is the echo of what's left." He nodded. Justice doesn't always sound like victory. We stood in his office, the city moving quietly outside. Somewhere, a siren wailed a single, distant note and then faded. When I left, the air felt heavy but still. No triumph, no revenge, only gravity doing its work. The foundation had held, but the rest of the house, Evan's, Sabrina's, and everything they built on lies was gone. 4 weeks later, the courtroom felt smaller. The air held that strange stillness before something irreversible. I sat beside James, hands folded over the same notebook that had started everything. Across the aisle, Sabrina adjusted her jacket again and again. Evan stared at the table, fingers pressed white against his knees. The judge entered, calm and deliberate. "We are here to deliver findings on the forensic report in Holt versus Holt." James stood. "Your Honor, the report confirms that every dollar used for the purchase and maintenance of the property originated from my client, Mrs. Nadine Holt. There is no record of contribution from the defendants." The judge flipped through the pages. The examiner verified all checks, invoices, and transfers as authentic. Her gaze shifted toward Sabrina. Additionally, the affidavit previously submitted by Mr. Robert Hayes was proven to be falsified. Sabrina's lawyer half rose. "Your Honor, that was an administrative mistake. Perjury is not administrative," the judge interrupted. "It is criminal." Sabrina's face flushed crimson. "We took care of her," she said suddenly. "We gave her a place to live. She's turning that kindness into punishment." The judge's tone cooled. "Mrs. Holt, you charged your mother-in-law rent for a house she paid for in full. You took out an $80,000 loan against that same property. That is not kindness." Sabrina's mouth opened, then closed. Evan looked as if every word was being carved into him. The judge continued. "This court recognizes the constructive trust doctrine and finds that Mrs. Nadine Holt is the equitable owner of the property. Furthermore, she is awarded $12,000 in compensatory damages for the unlawful lockout and resulting expenses." James nodded once, calm and precise. "Thank you." "Your Honor." Sabrina shot to her feet. "This isn't fair. She's manipulating the system." "Sit down, Mrs. Holt," the judge said firmly. "You have had your say. The law has spoken." Evan reached for her wrist. "Sabrina, stop." She pulled away. "She destroyed us." He turned toward me then, eyes wet, voice trembling. "Mom, I'm sorry." I met his gaze. "So am I." The gavel struck once sharp, final. The sound seemed to take the air out of the room. When the judge left, Sabrina's lawyer packed his briefcase without a word. Sabrina sat frozen, shaking her head in disbelief. Evan just stared down, whispering something I couldn't hear. James gathered the papers, slid the ruling toward me. "It's done," he said quietly. I nodded. My pulse steadied. Around us, The courtroom emptied the sound of footsteps, the faint shuffle of documents, the door closing behind the clerk. For the first time in months, I felt my lungs fill all the way. Justice didn't shout. It exhaled. I stood, pressed my hand against the folder that now carried my name, and walked toward the light spilling through the courthouse doors. The conference room was quiet, except for the scratch of the pen. Evan's hand shook as he signed the quitclaim deed, each letter of his name slower than the one before. The document lay between us like a confession written in ink. James sat across from him, expression steady. Once you sign the final page, the property transfers back to Mrs. Holt. The bank will receive payment from her directly. You'll be released from the mortgage. Evan nodded without looking up. His voice was thin. It's just paper. Right. No, James said softly. It's ownership. When Evan finished, he capped the pen and slid it toward me. I took it without a word. His wedding ring clinked against the table. He hadn't meant to make the sound, but it carried. Sabrina was not there. She'd stopped answering calls after the verdict. I picked up the keys beside the folder, the same ones I'd given him 15 years ago. Back when the house still smelled of new paint and plans. They were heavier now. He stared at them, eyes rimmed red. Mom, he whispered. I never wanted it to end like this. It didn't have to. I said, I thought I could fix it. He went on. The loan, the bills. I thought if I just bought time. Time doesn't buy honesty, I said. He flinched, but nodded. I know. I see it now. James stood. We're done here. I'll file the deed this afternoon. Evan rose slowly. He looked smaller somehow. Shoulders drawn in. I'm sorry, he said. The words broke apart halfway out of him. I met his eyes. You wanted half my pension, I said quietly. Now you know the cost. He closed his eyes, swallowed hard, and turned toward the door. The sound of his footsteps faded down the hall, uneven but real. When the door shut, James handed me the folder. It's over, he said. I placed the keys inside my purse, not to hide them, but to keep them where they belonged. It's settled, I replied. Outside, the afternoon light glinted against the courthouse glass. I walked through it, steady now, carrying the weight I had earned and nothing more. Weeks passed quietly. The courthouse papers were filed, the bank settled, and the house was mine again legally, wholly, without argument. This morning, I made coffee in the same kitchen where everything had begun. The air was still, carrying only the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint whistle of wind against the window. The mug warmed my hands. I watched sunlight touch the counter, the same spot where Sabrina once spread her spreadsheets and called it fairness. The surface gleamed now empty, calm, unclaimed. I heard footsteps on the porch before the knock came. When I opened the door, Evan stood there, thinner, quieter. He held out a single envelope. The last payment, he said softly. The $12,000 the judge ordered. I nodded, taking it. You could have mailed it. I wanted to see you. He hesitated, searching for words that might still matter. The house looks different. It feels different, I said. He looked past me into the living room, then at the porch light above us. You kept it on. I always have, I said, even when it wasn't for anyone. He exhaled, eyes wet. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to start over. That's good, I said. Start with honesty this time. It costs less. He gave a small, broken laugh, nodded, and turned toward the steps. I didn't stop him. When the sound of his car faded, I went back to the table and opened my notebook one last time. The pages were filled with neat handwriting dates, notes, Moments of betrayal and proof of endurance. At the bottom of the final page, I wrote a single line, "Peace doesn't pay rent." It doesn't. I closed the cover, set it beside the mug, and stepped out to the porch. The evening light had begun to fade, painting the street in soft gold. Across the quiet neighborhood, porch lamps blinked on one by one. I switched mine on, too, not as a signal or invitation, just as a small, steady reminder that the house, like me, had finally learned how to stand without apology. The light glowed warm against the dusk, steady and sure.